And welcome to week 3 and your third video tutorial of the term. As we begin week 3, you are starting your second theme or your second overarching category of the Humanities 100 course. So in weeks 1 and 2, you were looking at an introduction to the humanities, what we're thinking about in terms of who creates works of art and artifacts. And in theme 2, which we're going to be looking at in weeks 3 and 4, you are going to be talking about the fundamentals of human culture. And one of the first big concepts you're looking at is this idea of a universal idea and how it shapes the humanities. You might also see it referred to as an enduring idea. So what I wanted to do in our video tutorial here is just talk a little bit more quickly about what a universal idea is to hopefully clarify it for you. So universal ideas, what are they? Why do we want to think about them? And how can we approach them when we're looking at the humanities and works of art? So first, the what. A universal idea, another way to describe it is a big idea or a larger idea or question that can have a profound meaning for us as human beings, as individuals. So these ideas and concepts and questions that we often find ourselves wondering about that go beyond just the basic facts or just historical statistics and so forth in our lives. These sort of larger philosophical questions that we find ourselves considering over and over again. Universal ideas can transcend culture and time, meaning that as far back in history as we want to look, or in whatever culture we might look to, whatever geographical location in the world we might look at, we can see some universal ideas pop up again and again, sometimes just in culture in general, as well as when artists create works of artistic expression. So some of these universal ideas we see since the beginning of time and all the way up to the present day. Others might be a little more specific or particular to a certain time period or culture. So for example, the universal idea of love. We see this one appear again and again in terms of artistic expression and artifacts and works of art that people create since the beginning of time. This kind of long-running theme of love. We see it in literature and poetry and visual arts and sculpture all the way up to today, and in terms of our films and everything that we look at in terms of digital art, we see this theme of love, the universal concept of love popping up again and again. Faith and spirituality is another universal idea, again, regardless of culture or time or specific religion. If we want to define a particular religion, we can find some sort of faith or spirituality that might run throughout particular cultures, and we see it appear in works of art as well. The universal idea of the hero. Again, it might be literary, it might be visual arts, it might be a film. This concept of what makes a hero, what makes a heroic figure is another one of those universal ideas we've considered throughout time. The universal concept of family. What defines a family? What does it mean? How is it important to a particular culture? And how does it manifest itself in works of art? The universal theme of death, whether we like it or not, is part of a overarching question or idea that we see throughout time. The theme of identity, whether it's individual identity or as a group, as a community, it's a universal idea that transcends time. The universal concept of dreams, or what we imagine in our subconscious, and again, depending on the particular culture and his period, it might manifest itself in dreams or the subconscious or a psychological study. The universal idea of nature and how man coexists with the natural world. Portraiture, how we present ourselves, that kind of links back to the idea of identity, how we see individuals presenting themselves or others, or trying to capture the likeness of someone from different time periods. Universal idea of power, what that means, whether it's individual power, personal power, or cultural, community, political power. Universal idea of war, again, whether we like it or not, is a universal idea that we've seen throughout history, and it's often a topic or subject for works of artistic expression and artifacts. So why do we think about universal ideas? We want to go beyond merely learning facts or skills and sort of going through just the basic ideas of education to think about our lives outside of a vacuum. So when we look at a work of art, we don't want to just be able to label it as being created in this time period and it was created using these materials and so, just kind of getting the ideas of the facts behind it, identifying the artist or the maker. We want to think beyond those facts and consider the bigger forces behind its creation. And it also helps us to make connections when we think about these universal ideas, to think about the relevance of studying art and studying the humanities, why it is that we still look back at ancient history, for example. Why does that still draw us back to these works and ideas that were created so long ago? It has something to do with this universal and timeless idea. How do we do this? Well, practically speaking, you can start by reading through this week's materials and links. In week 3, you'll see some great links to different articles and ideas that give you more examples of these universal ideas and why they're important to us and powerful for us to understand and how they help enrich our lives. And you can also think about universal ideas that interest you in particular, or ones that you've already found yourself questioning or contemplating in your life. Whether you might have realized it or not, there may be a question that kind of constantly nags you that may or may not have a clear-cut answer, and that may be tapping into this idea of a universal idea or overarching, timeless, enduring concept. So thinking of those that interest you in particular or have a particular draw for you personally can help you in your assignments in the weeks ahead too. So of course, when you choose something that's interesting to you and you want to consider more about it, you'll enjoy writing about it and considering it even more.